The sun was high in the sky, and the backyard was alive with the sound of laughter, music, and splashing water. The pool sparkled under the warm afternoon light, reflecting tiny rainbows across the surrounding deck. Towels were spread out on lounge chairs, drinks sat in colorful cups on the table, and a small cooler hummed quietly nearby, full of cold sodas and water bottles. It was the perfect day for a pool party, and everyone seemed to feel it. The narrator had spent the morning setting everything up, making sure the music playlist was just right and the snacks were easy to grab. Chips, fruit, sandwiches, and a few desserts were neatly arranged, while the cooler was stocked with ice to keep the drinks chilled. The decorations were simple: brightly colored streamers, a few inflatable pool toys, and floating lights that would glow when the sun went down. It wasn't a huge party, just a gathering of friends and a few family members, but it was exactly the kind of casual fun everyone needed. Kids ran in and out of the water, squealing whenever someone made a big splash. Their laughter was infectious, making even the adults smile and relax. Some friends were sitting in chairs, chatting and sipping drinks, while others were lying on towels soaking up the sun. Someone had set up a small speaker near the edge of the pool, and a playlist of upbeat summer songs kept the mood lively. The narrator leaned against the railing for a moment, watching it all and feeling a quiet sense of satisfaction. Everything looked just right. As the party continued, the narrator noticed a woman walking slowly along the sidewalk outside the yard. She was middle-aged, wearing sunglasses and carrying a large bag over one shoulder. She didn't seem to be hurrying anywhere. Instead, she stopped a few times, looking curiously at the backyard. The narrator could see her peering through the fence with an expression that mixed curiosity and mild irritation. It was the kind of look that suggested she wasn't entirely pleased with what she was seeing, but she was clearly intrigued. One of the guests, noticing the woman as well, made a light joke. "Hey, maybe she wants to join us," they said with a laugh. Everyone turned their heads and saw her again, now leaning a little closer to the fence as if trying to see inside more clearly. The narrator smiled politely, shrugging it off. It was unusual, but not necessarily a problem. Sometimes neighbors walked by, and some were just curious about the noise and laughter coming from a lively backyard. Still, there was something about the way the woman kept looking in that felt a little intrusive. She wasn't waving or smiling, just staring. The narrator tried to ignore it, focusing instead on handing out drinks and chatting with guests. Conversations flowed easily, topics ranging from summer plans to funny incidents at work, and the occasional comment about the children's antics in the pool. Everything felt relaxed, as if the party had created a little world of its own, where nothing could go wrong. A few moments later, a friend nudged the narrator and whispered, "She's still there, watching. Don't you think she's, I don't know, a little too interested?" The narrator nodded subtly, glancing again at the woman. She had moved closer to the gate now, peering around it like she was trying to find a way in. It wasn't threatening, but it was unusual enough to make the narrator feel a little uneasy. "Probably just curious," the narrator whispered back. "Let's not worry about it. It's summer. People walk by all the time." The rest of the party continued as normal, though the narrator couldn't shake the feeling that something might happen. Friends splashed in the pool, shouting with excitement while someone had grabbed a frisbee and was tossing it to others lounging on the grass. The atmosphere was carefree and light, the kind of day where laughter seemed to float in the air like a tangible thing. For a while, it seemed like the moment of peace would last all afternoon. Meanwhile, the woman outside continued her slow, deliberate pace along the fence. Occasionally, she adjusted her sunglasses and tilted her head, studying the scene inside. She wasn't speaking to anyone, just watching. Her presence was subtle, yet it carried a strange tension, almost as if she were waiting for the perfect moment to step in. The narrator, trying to remain polite and focused on the party, reminded themselves that it was their private space, and unless the woman tried to enter, there was no need to make a scene. As the day wore on, more friends arrived. Each new guest brought a small wave of excitement, laughter, and stories. Someone had brought a portable speaker and set it up near the pool, boosting the music slightly louder than before. Drinks were passed around, and the smell of sunscreen mixed with the scent of fresh-cut grass filled the air. It was exactly the kind of day everyone wanted, a break from work, responsibilities, and the stress of daily life. The narrator felt a warmth of happiness seeing people relax, smile, and enjoy the simple joys of summer. But in the back of the narrator's mind, The woman by the fence remained a small, nagging thought. She had moved a little closer again, now clearly observing the children in the pool. The narrator felt a mix of concern and irritation. It wasn't fear, not exactly, but it was an instinctive awareness that something might go wrong if boundaries weren't respected. A polite wave or smile might have sufficed if she were genuinely friendly, but there was no acknowledgement, only a watchful gaze. One of the younger guests noticed the woman too. "Who's that lady?" they asked, pointing toward the fence. Their voice was innocent, curious, and completely unbothered by social norms. The narrator hesitated, unsure how to answer without drawing too much attention. "Just someone passing by," they said finally, hoping to avoid unnecessary worry. But the child's eyes remained fixed on the figure, and the subtle tension in the narrator's chest didn't disappear. At this point, the narrator decided to keep a discreet eye on the situation while still enjoying the party. They went back to the center of the yard, handing out snacks and chatting with friends, occasionally glancing at the fence. The woman was still there, but now she seemed to be pacing slowly along the edge, stopping every few steps to observe. Something about her movement was deliberate, almost purposeful, and it made the narrator more alert. Despite the underlying unease, the party continued smoothly. Children played games, adults chatted and laughed, and the water in the pool glittered under the sun. Someone had brought a small inflatable ring, which became the center of a playful competition among the kids. Splatters of water flew in every direction, and laughter echoed around the backyard. In those moments, the narrator almost forgot about the woman by the fence. Almost. But then, as if on cue, the woman moved closer to the gate. She paused, looking around as if she were considering her next step. The narrator noticed her lingering longer than seemed necessary and felt a spike of concern. A polite smile and wave might have been appropriate, but instead she seemed to be sizing up the scene, calculating something. It was a subtle but unmistakable signal that the situation could escalate. The narrator took a deep breath and reminded themselves to stay calm. "It's probably nothing," they whispered internally. Still, they couldn't shake the feeling that the peaceful afternoon might be about to get interrupted. And yet, with music playing, laughter filling the air, and the sun warming their back, there was no immediate action required. They decided to let the moment pass and focus on the friends and family who had gathered, hoping that the woman would eventually move along and continue on her own way. As the first part of the afternoon drew on, the backyard remained a lively mix of activity, conversation, and playful chaos. The water continued to ripple and sparkle, drinks were shared, and small groups of people talked and laughed in different corners of the yard. Everything felt just right, balanced perfectly between fun and relaxation. Yet just beyond the edge of the fence, the woman's watchful eyes continued to follow every movement, a quiet shadow in the otherwise bright and cheerful scene. The sun was still high, and the backyard remained lively with laughter, music, and the sound of splashing water. The narrator was helping a group of friends set up a small game near the pool when movement caught their eye. The woman who had been lingering by the fence was now standing at the gate. She wasn't hesitating or peeking anymore. She had stepped into the yard, carrying herself as though she belonged there. At first, the narrator froze for a moment. It wasn't just her presence that was surprising, but the confidence with which she entered. She carried a large tote bag and wore sunglasses, but it wasn't enough to hide the intensity in her eyes. She smiled, but it wasn't the friendly kind. It was a smile that felt like it came with an expectation, a silent demand. "Hi," she said brightly, taking a few steps closer. "I live nearby, and I thought I could join the party for a little while." "Everyone seems like they're having so much fun." The narrator tried to respond politely, their voice calm but firm. "Oh, I'm sorry. This is a private party for friends and family. We weren't expecting anyone outside of the invite list." The woman waved a hand dismissively as if the explanation didn't apply to her. "Oh, that's okay. I just wanted to see what the fuss was about. I promise I'll be quiet." She started walking further into the yard, her steps slow and deliberate. The narrator's stomach tightened. Something about her tone and body language suggested she wasn't just there to see. She was taking liberties, entering the private space without permission, and already starting to act as though she belonged. A friend noticed the interaction and whispered to the narrator, She's not leaving, is she?" The narrator shook their head slightly, trying to keep calm. "Let's just see if she notices she isn't invited," they replied. though their own unease was growing. The woman wandered closer to the pool, pretending to look around casually while glancing at the group of children playing. She made small talk with a few guests, introducing herself without waiting for a proper invitation. "I just love summer parties," she said. "There's nothing better than a pool on a sunny day, don't you think?" Her voice was friendly on the surface, but her eyes scanned the scene like she was checking off some private list, measuring everyone and everything. Some guests were too polite to confront her, nodding or responding with brief answers. Others exchanged awkward glances, unsure whether to step in or let it go. The narrator felt the tension rise as they moved closer, hoping to regain control of the situation without causing a scene. "Ma'am," the narrator said carefully, trying to remain composed, "I really appreciate that you want to join, but this is a private gathering. We need to ask you to stay by the gate or come back another time." The woman laughed lightly, brushing off the request. "Oh, don't be so formal. I promise I won't be a bother. Besides, I love water. I might just dip in for a second." She started moving toward the pool, her tote bag swinging at her side. The narrator felt a jolt of panic. "Please wait, don't go near the pool. That's private property and I can't allow it," they said, trying to project authority while keeping their voice steady. The woman paused, but only briefly. She glanced at the pool with an exaggerated sigh. "Oh, come on. It's just a little water. What's the big deal?" She smiled as though the rules didn't apply to her, and her confidence made it clear she was willing to push boundaries. One of the friends stepped in, trying to diffuse the situation with humor. "Maybe she's just testing the water," they said quietly, hoping to lighten the tension. A few people laughed nervously, but it didn't change the woman's attitude. She seemed to sense that her intrusion had caused a stir, and instead of backing off, she appeared amused by the reactions. The narrator took a deep breath, reminding themselves to stay calm. They moved a step closer to her, maintaining eye contact. "I'm serious. Please don't touch the water. I need you to respect that." The woman waved her hand again, a little impatiently this time.
Fine, fine.
"I won't touch it. Yet," she said, clearly enjoying the small rebellion of her behavior. But even as she said it, she continued to linger near the pool, glancing at the children with a strange curiosity. Her presence was becoming more disruptive by the minute. The children noticed her too. One of them frowned and whispered to a friend, "Who is that lady? She's kind of scary." Their innocent concern made the narrator's chest tighten. They realized the intrusion was no longer a small annoyance. It was starting to affect the atmosphere of the party. Despite the narrator's attempts to maintain control, the woman's energy was infectious. A few guests began to feel uncomfortable, unsure whether to speak up or ignore her. Her constant commentary, casual way of moving through the yard, and disregard for personal boundaries created a tension that couldn't be ignored. The narrator tried to focus on the positive, reminding themselves that the party could still go on. They called out to the kids, "Who wants to play a game?" and tried to redirect attention to the activities. Some children cheered and ran toward the suggested game, but the woman's gaze followed them, and it was clear she had no intention of leaving quietly. At one point, she wandered closer to the snack table, picking up a small plate without asking. "Oh, these look delicious," she said, inspecting the food as if she were part of the setup team. The narrator quickly stepped in, gently taking the plate back. "Actually, these are for our guests only," they explained politely but firmly. The woman feigned surprise. "Oh, I didn't know. I'll just look then," she said, placing the plate down with exaggerated care. Her tone suggested she had no real intention of following the rules, and it was obvious she was enjoying the attention she was drawing. The narrator noticed that other guests were beginning to murmur among themselves. Some whispered about how unusual her behavior was, while others tried to joke to make the situation feel less tense. But the narrator knew that humor alone wouldn't resolve it. She was testing boundaries deliberately, and it would only escalate if not handled properly. Finally, the narrator took a deep breath and addressed her directly, trying to stay calm but firm. "I need to be very clear. You are not invited to this party. You cannot touch the pool, take food, or interfere with our guests. I'm asking you to leave." The woman paused, looking at them with a combination of surprise and mild indignation. "Leave? I just came to have some fun. Everyone seems so happy, why can't I enjoy it too?" "It's private," the narrator replied, holding their ground. I understand you want to join, but you have to respect our space. This isn't a public event. Her reaction was a mix of disbelief and amusement. Private? What does that even mean? You're being so dramatic. It's just a pool party. She laughed, shaking her head as if the very idea of being asked to leave was absurd. The narrator felt their patience being tested, but they stayed composed. They couldn't allow her to continue disrupting the party or make the guests feel uncomfortable. They repeated firmly, "I'm asking you to leave now. This is my home and this is my party. Please respect that." For a moment, the woman hesitated, her expression flickering between anger and surprise. Then, as if deciding the fight wasn't worth it yet, she backed away slightly. But she didn't leave entirely. Instead, she lingered near the edge of the yard, still making comments and laughing softly at her own antics. Her presence was intrusive enough to keep the narrator on edge, but not quite enough to escalate further, at least for now. The narrator let out a quiet breath, trying to steady their nerves. They returned to the center of the party, apologizing lightly to the guests who had noticed the scene. "Sorry about that," they said. "Some people just don't understand boundaries." A few friends nodded, appreciating the effort to maintain calm, while others laughed quietly at the absurdity of the situation. Despite the intrusion, the party slowly regained some of its earlier energy. Children continued to splash and play, friends chatted again, and music played in the background. But the narrator remained alert, keeping one eye on the woman, knowing she could make another move at any moment. Even as the sun moved toward the late afternoon, the woman's presence reminded everyone that the day wasn't completely peaceful. She lingered near the pool, her gestures casual but deliberate, occasionally glancing at the narrator as if challenging them silently. The narrator knew the situation would not resolve on its own. They would need to take further steps if she continued to overstep boundaries. And so the party continued, a mix of laughter and tension, fun and frustration. The narrator focused on keeping things calm while watching the woman closely, aware that the next moment could bring an unexpected twist, one that would test patience, boundaries, and the ability to handle an unwelcome guest in a space meant for friends and family. The afternoon had been going well until the woman, who had been lingering near the gate and casually observing the party, decided she had had enough of just standing. She walked slowly toward the pool, her steps deliberate as if she was announcing her arrival. The narrator noticed immediately, a tightening feeling in their chest, because they knew this was the moment the tension would escalate. "Please, don't go near the pool," the narrator called again, keeping their voice calm but firm. "This is private property and the children are using it. You cannot touch the water." The woman glanced back at them, her lips curling into a smile that was both playful and challenging. "Oh, come on. It's just a little water. What's the worst that could happen?" she said. Her tone was light, almost joking, but the underlying challenge was clear. She looked around at the guests as if daring anyone to stop her. Some of the friends exchanged uneasy glances. A few whispered to each other, unsure whether to intervene, while others tried to ignore the situation, hoping the narrator could handle it. But the children in the pool noticed her approach, pausing mid-splash to watch. Their laughter slowed, and some of them moved closer to the edge, their eyes wide with curiosity and uncertainty. The narrator stepped forward, positioning themselves between the woman and the pool. "I'm serious," they said. "You cannot go in. Please step back." She waved her hand dismissively and leaned slightly over the edge of the pool. "I'm just going to test it," she said, as though that made it acceptable. She dipped her fingers into the water, then immediately pulled back with a dramatic gasp. "Oh my goodness! That is freezing! This water is disgusting." The children gasped, some laughing nervously while the adults tried not to look too amused. The narrator felt a mix of frustration and embarrassment. The scene was becoming more chaotic, and the attention of everyone in the yard had shifted to her reaction. She moved a little closer again, crouching slightly to touch the water with the tips of her fingers. "I can't believe people swim in this," she exclaimed loudly. "It's so gross. I would never let my children play in water like this." Her voice was theatrical, as if she were performing for an audience rather than speaking seriously. One of the friends whispered to the narrator, "Is she for real?" The narrator didn't answer, instead focusing on keeping control. They could see the way her words were unsettling the children and making some guests uncomfortable. It wasn't just an annoyance anymore. It was disrupting the party. "Ma'am," the narrator said again, their voice firmer this time. "Please step away from the pool. You're scaring the kids and making people uncomfortable. I need you to stop." The woman straightened, a smile playing on her lips. "Oh, I'm just having a little fun. Don't take it so seriously. It's a pool party. Everything should be about fun." "But this isn't your pool," the narrator replied, holding their ground. "You're not invited and you need to respect the rules." She let out a small, exaggerated sigh and shook her head. "Rules? Who cares about rules on a sunny day? Everyone's having fun. You need to relax." She bent over again, dipping her hand fully into the water this time, then recoiling dramatically. "Oh, I can't believe it. This water is filthy." A few of the guests chuckled quietly, unable to contain their amusement at her over-the-top reaction. Others looked uncomfortable, unsure how to respond. The children, however, were beginning to lose patience. "Why is she making a big deal about nothing?" one of them asked, wrinkling their nose in confusion. The narrator felt a mix of frustration and responsibility. They couldn't allow her to continue behaving this way. "I'm asking you one more time," they said firmly, stepping closer. "Step away from the pool. Now. You need to leave if you can't follow the rules." The woman straightened, brushing her wet fingers on the side of the pool with exaggerated care. "Leave? I just got here." "This is ridiculous. I was just testing the water and now you're overreacting. It's not like anyone asked me to leave before." Her tone had shifted slightly from playful to defensive, as if she were arguing against an injustice. The narrator's jaw tightened. They had tried patience, calmness, and politeness, but her refusal to listen made it clear that the situation required more direct action. "You have no right to be here," they said firmly. "This is my home, my party, and my pool. You need to leave." For a moment, the woman seemed stunned. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed, and she shook her head as if the idea of leaving was preposterous. "I can't believe you're asking me to leave over a little water. Everyone's being so dramatic." The tension in the yard rose noticeably. The children had moved closer to the narrator for safety, while some of the friends looked around awkwardly, unsure whether to step in or remain spectators. The woman, sensing the attention, seemed to enjoy the disruption she had caused. She tilted her head, looked at the group, and let out a little laugh that made it clear she felt above reproach. "Please, step back now," the narrator said again, their voice steady despite the frustration. "I'm giving you a final warning. If you don't leave, I will have no choice but to call someone to help remove you." Her eyes widened slightly at the mention of outside help. For a moment she seemed to reconsider, glancing around at the guests. But instead of leaving, she bent over once more and splashed her hand through the water, letting out another exaggerated scream. "Oh my gosh. This is terrible. You're all swimming in this filth." A few guests couldn't help laughing openly this time. The scene had become so absurd that it was hard not to. But the narrator ignored the laughter, focusing entirely on the woman and the children's safety. She was crossing lines now, creating unnecessary fear and chaos. The woman, clearly enjoying the attention, didn't stop. She began moving her hands through the water, splashing slightly, then jumping back with a theatrical gasp. "I cannot believe anyone would allow this," she shouted, making sure her voice carried across the yard. One of the older guests tried to intervene gently. "Ma'am, maybe you should calm down," they suggested. "Everyone's just trying to have a fun day." But the woman ignored the advice, waving a hand dismissively. "Calm down? I'm calm. I'm just stating facts. This water is disgusting." The narrator took a deep breath, realizing that diplomacy alone wasn't working. She was determined to continue, no matter how many polite requests were made. They stepped closer to the pool, keeping a steady eye on her movements, ready to guide her away if necessary. "You are overreacting and disrupting the party," the narrator said, their voice firm. "I'm asking you one last time. Step away from the pool and leave the property. Now." The woman froze for a moment, her hand hovering over the water. She looked around, perhaps realizing that her antics had drawn every eye in the yard. Her smile faltered slightly, replaced by a flicker of frustration. She shook her head as if she couldn't believe anyone would make such a demand. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she let her hand drop and stepped back from the pool. Her shoulders were tense and her lips pressed together, but she didn't leave entirely. Instead, she moved to the edge of the yard, muttering under her breath about the ridiculous rules and dramatic people. The narrator let out a slow breath, feeling the tension ease slightly. The immediate chaos was over, but the situation was far from resolved. She was still on the property, still observing the party, and it was clear she could make another move at any time. The children returned to their games, though some cast curious glances toward her, unsure whether she would come back to the pool. The adults tried to regain the relaxed atmosphere, laughing and chatting quietly to distract themselves from the tension. The narrator moved among the guests, ensuring everyone felt safe and comfortable, while keeping one eye on the woman near the edge of the yard. As the afternoon wore on, the narrator realized that this was a test of patience, boundaries, and calm under pressure. The woman had made her point. She could disrupt the party with a combination of confidence, theatrics, and disregard for rules. But the narrator also knew that as long as they stayed firm and composed, they could maintain control and protect the guests. Still, a lingering unease remained. The woman's behavior had shown that she would push limits, challenge authority, and create drama if she chose. The narrator understood that the situation was far from over. They needed to stay alert, prepared for the next move, and ready to enforce the boundaries they had set. And so, the party continued, a mix of laughter, caution, and the underlying tension of knowing that one unpredictable guest could change everything in an instant. The pool sparkled, the music played, and the children laughed, but the shadow of disruption lingered, reminding everyone that boundaries are important, even on the sunniest of days. A woman had backed away from the pool, but she wasn't gone. She stood at the edge of the yard, muttering under her breath and shaking her head as if the entire party was ridiculous. The narrator, though exhausted from trying to maintain calm, knew the situation was far from over. Every guest felt the tension, even those who were trying to laugh it off. There was no mistaking that she could make another move at any moment. The narrator approached her cautiously, keeping a polite tone but firm voice. "I really need you to leave now. This is my home and my party, and you are not invited," the woman scoffed. "Oh, don't be so dramatic. I'm not hurting anyone. I just wanted to enjoy a little fun, and now everyone's acting like I committed a crime." She folded her arms, standing her ground as though daring anyone to challenge her further. The narrator felt a mix of frustration and determination. They had tried to reason, warn, and explain politely, yet she continued to ignore the rules. The children were now hesitant to return to the pool, looking at her with cautious eyes, and the adults were becoming visibly uncomfortable. It was clear that this situation required a more direct confrontation. "Ma'am," the narrator said, holding their hands out in a calm but controlled gesture, "I'm not trying to be rude, but you cannot stay here. You've already caused disruption. I need you to leave, or I will have no choice but to ask for help from outside." Her eyes narrowed, a mix of surprise and indignation. "Help? Are you threatening me? I don't think you can just kick me out like this." Her tone was sharp, defensive, and laced with a hint of entitlement. The narrator stayed composed, knowing that raising their voice or showing anger would only escalate the situation. "This is not a threat. It's a fact. You are not invited. You cannot touch the pool or take food. I am asking you to respect that." For a few moments, she didn't respond. Instead, she walked slowly along the edge of the yard, muttering to herself about dramatic people and ridiculous rules. She paused by the snack table, looking as if she might grab something, then glanced at the narrator with a smirk, clearly enjoying the discomfort she was causing. The narrator signaled to a couple of the older friends who had been trying to stay neutral. "Please stay calm," they whispered. "Just observe in case we need support. Do not argue or escalate. I'll handle it." The woman, sensing that she had an audience, began to amplify her performance. She exaggerated her gestures, leaning over slightly to indicate shock at the pool, spreading her hands as if she couldn't believe anyone could swim there, and making comments loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I've never seen such water in my life. It's disgusting. How can anyone let their children play in this?" The narrator moved closer, their voice steady but firm. "This is your final warning. Step away from the pool and leave. Now." Her eyes flickered, and for a brief second, the narrator thought they might finally get through to her. But instead of leaving, she turned her attention to a couple of guests sitting on the deck. "You all agree with this?" she asked loudly, gesturing at them. "You think this is okay? You're just letting them ruin everything?" The guests looked uncomfortable. Some tried to shake their heads, signaling that they didn't agree with her, while others ignored her entirely. A few whispered quietly, clearly embarrassed, but the woman's gaze swept across the yard, ensuring that everyone noticed her presence. The narrator felt the tension reach a boiling point. "I'm serious," they said, their voice rising just slightly to assert authority. "You cannot stay here. You need to leave immediately, or I will call someone to assist. This is my home, my party, and you are trespassing." The woman's face shifted from smug amusement to genuine irritation. "Trespassing? I live nearby. I should be allowed to enjoy a sunny day. Everyone's acting so dramatic over nothing." Her voice grew louder, and she stepped a little closer to the pool, daring the narrator to make another move. The children, sensing the rising conflict, backed away from the pool. One of them whispered to a friend, "Why won't she just go?" Their innocence and confusion made the narrator's frustration deepen, but they took a deep breath and focused on maintaining control. A friend finally spoke up, trying to mediate. "Maybe she just doesn't understand. Let's calm things down." The woman ignored them entirely, her attention fixed on the narrator. "Calm down? I'm perfectly calm. You're the one yelling and acting like I'm doing something wrong. It's just a pool party." The narrator realized that no amount of reasoning would work. She wasn't listening. She wasn't going to leave willingly. Every polite attempt had failed. They needed to stand firm and, if necessary, involve someone else to enforce the boundaries. "Ma'am," they said, their voice even but resolute, "I have asked you multiple times to leave. You are not respecting this space or these people. I will call for assistance if you do not step away from the pool and leave immediately." Her expression hardened. For a moment she looked as if she might argue further, but then she seemed to weigh her options. The narrator could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands tightened slightly as if preparing for a final argument. Instead, she let out a dramatic sigh and waved her hand in the air. "Fine," she said loudly, "but this is ridiculous. You people need to learn how to enjoy yourselves." She stepped back, though not fully toward the gate. She lingered near the edge of the yard, muttering under her breath, occasionally glancing at the pool as if she were still considering another act of disruption. The narrator stayed close, ensuring she didn't return to the water or approach any of the guests. The children slowly returned to their games, encouraged by the narrator's calm presence. They dipped their toes into the water, though some kept glancing toward the woman with a mixture of curiosity and caution. The adults, sensing that the immediate threat had lessened, tried to restore a relaxed atmosphere. Music played again, conversations resumed, and laughter slowly filled the yard. The narrator, however, knew that this wasn't over. The woman's behavior had shown that she would challenge boundaries and create drama if she chose. The tension was still present, a quiet undercurrent beneath the surface of the party. The narrator remained vigilant, moving among guests, keeping a watchful eye on her, and ready to intervene if necessary. Minutes passed, and the woman continued to hover near the yard's edge. Occasionally, she muttered complaints about dramatic rules or people who can't have fun, but she did not approach the pool again. The narrator took the opportunity to check in with the children, making sure they felt safe and encouraging them to continue enjoying themselves. A few friends whispered words of encouragement to the narrator. "You're handling this really well," one said. "I would have lost my patience a long time ago." The narrator nodded, grateful for the support, but remained focused. Patience and calmness were the only ways to maintain control without creating more chaos. Despite the disruption, the party slowly regained its rhythm. The sun moved lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the yard. Drinks were passed around, games continued, and the laughter of friends and children filled the air once more. Yet the narrator couldn't completely relax. The woman's presence remained a lingering tension, a reminder that even a bright, sunny day could be unsettled by someone unwilling to respect boundaries. The narrator reflected briefly on the experience, realizing that handling difficult people required a balance of patience, firmness, and composure. She had tested every polite tactic, every calm request, and now it was clear that setting firm boundaries was the only way to maintain order. The narrator knew that the final resolution would require vigilance, clear communication, and, if necessary, outside assistance. As the afternoon continued, the guests gradually resumed their activities, laughing and playing as if nothing had happened. The narrator moved through the yard, making small talk, handing out drinks, and ensuring everyone felt comfortable. The music played, the water shimmered, and for brief moments the tension lifted. But the woman remained at the edge of the yard, a quiet reminder that the situation was not fully resolved. Her occasional mutters, her narrowed eyes, and her refusal to leave completely kept the narrator alert. It was a delicate balance, enjoying the party while being prepared for another possible escalation. The narrator knew that when the moment came, they would have to act decisively to finally end the disruption. For now, though, they focused on keeping the children safe, the guests comfortable, and the atmosphere as relaxed as possible. The tension lingered, yes, but it was manageable with calm, patience, and clear boundaries. The sun began its slow descent, casting a warm golden glow over the backyard. The pool sparkled, the music played, and laughter echoed among friends. And yet, just beyond the edge of the yard, the woman stood silently watching, waiting, and reminding everyone that even on the sunniest days, boundaries are essential, and handling difficult people requires both firmness and composure.